The American President Joe Biden is speaking at the funeral of the former president, Jimmy Carter. Let's listen in.
6 decades. A deep friendship that started in 1974. I was a 31-year-old senator, and I was the first senator outside of Georgia, maybe the first senator, to endorse his candidacy for president. It was an endorsement based on what I believe is Jimmy Carter's enduring attribute: character, character, character. Because of that character, I believe, is destiny. Destiny in our lives, and quite frankly, destiny in the life of the nation. It's an accumulation of a million things built on character that leads to a good life in a decent country. Life of purpose, life of meaning. Now, how do we find that good life? What does it look like? What does it take to build character? Do the ends justify the means? Jimmy Carter's friendship taught me, and through his life taught me, the strength of character is more than title or the power we hold. It's the strength to understand that everyone should be treated with dignity, respect, that everyone, and I mean everyone, deserves an even shot. Not a guarantee, but just a shot. You know, we have an obligation to give hate no safe harbor, and to stand up to what my dad used to say is the greatest sin of all: the abuse of power. Now, it's not about being perfect, because none of us are perfect. We're all fallible. But it's about asking ourselves, are we striving to do things, the right things? What values? What are the values that animate our spirit? Do we operate from fear or hope?
All right, so that is the American President Joe Biden there giving his address during the funeral of Jimmy Carter. To tell us more, we're joined by Voice of America's correspondent Kane Faribault, who's joining us live from Plains, Georgia. This, of course, is the hometown of Jimmy Carter. Now, Kane, we've, of course, been talking to you about the very somber moment. Jimmy Carter was passed away at the age of 100. He's, of course, being laid to rest. Give us a sense of what the mood is like from the place where you're joining us from, Plains, Georgia, because this, of course, was the hometown of Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, this is a very bittersweet moment for the people that live here in Plains, Georgia. You know, this is the place that President Carter and Mrs. Carter called home for a century. This is the place that shaped them. This is the place that shaped the character. This is the shape that basically formed how they became the people that we all know them to be. And this is some of the things that you're hearing in that eulogy by Joe Biden and also some of the other speakers. They're talking about the things that President and Mrs. Carter learned here in this hometown. And they are very closely connected to this place. I mean, this is a rural town of about 700 people. It's about 3 hours away from Atlanta. This is a town that has 7 churches, one of them being the church that Jimmy Carter preached in and taught Sunday school lessons for decades. And this is a place that's really, you know, down home. This is a place that's very community driven. It's a place that's very close knit. And it's also a place that's very welcoming. You could be a visitor here, but people here make you feel like you're one of them as a part of this community. And that might also be a part of the character of President and Mrs. Carter. And I think for those people here, this wasn't just the former president of the United States. This is one of their own. It's a friend. It's a member of their community. It's family here.
Indeed. And also, you've interviewed Jimmy Carter several times. You know, give us a sense of what his legacy is like and why he's, you know, so popular with the American people, even though it's 4 decades since he demitted office as the President of the United States.
So those people here in the United States that know President Carter now probably saw some video of him swinging a hammer at a build site for Habitat for Humanity. President Carter, for 1 week out of the year, would volunteer to build houses for Habitat for Humanity. He and Mrs. Carter participated in the Jimmy and Rosalynn Carter Work Project for Habitat for Humanity, and they would go around the world, not just in the United States, around the world, building houses for those who couldn't afford to build their own houses or have their own homes. But the media used to cover this all the time. It used to be the thing that President Carter would be seen on television here doing in his post-presidency. But that was only 1 week out of the year. The other 51 weeks of the year, they were spent in the service of the Carter Center. And their motto is waging peace, fighting disease, and building hope. And in the course of doing that, they monitored more than 100 elections in countries around the world. They are also addressing neglected tropical diseases, guinea worm, river blindness. They even tried to have a program against malaria on the island of Hispaniola. And you know, these are just many of the things the Carter Center did. And this is how Americans know them today. This is why they have such high popularity ratings, because at the end of the day, many Americans didn't support Carter in his re-election campaign in 1980, and that led to his defeat to Ronald Reagan. But there's a lot that's happened since that loss in the White House, and President Carter sort of reinvented himself in his post-presidency.
Indeed. So he was a one-time president. He was president from 77 till 81. He did not again stand for election. But, you know, you've been following his career since he's demitted office very, very closely here. How is it that Jimmy Carter has been able to, you know, bring people from the Democrat camp and also the Republican camp together, considering that at this moment in the United States of America, politics has become very divisive?
So President Carter ran against Gerald Ford for the White House in 1976, and they were actually bitter rivals, Ford being the Republican, Carter being the Democrat. And after they both were out of the White House, they had both only served one term as U.S. presidents. They were on a flight to Egypt to attend the funeral of Egyptian President Anwar Sadat. And it was on that flight that Jimmy Carter and Gerald Ford, political opposites, right? Democrat, Republican, rivals for the White House. Mm-hmm. They realized they had more in common than what separated them. And they decided that what they wanted to do is come together and try to be an example of bipartisanship, an example of political cooperation. And they spent both of their lives and their post-presidencies being the example for both parties about how it's okay to disagree without being disagreeable. It's okay to have differing views, but there's a lot more that connects us than divides us. And they tried to use their lives as examples of that. And I think, especially in the last few years and in the last years of his life, President Carter wanted his example of his relationship with Gerald Ford, which historians now consider to be the closest of any two U.S. presidents in history, even more so than Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, the founders of our republic. They think that Ford and Carter had the closest relationship of any two presidents, and they want that to be the example now.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Kane Faribault, for joining us and getting us all those insights there from Plains in Georgia.
Thank you.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.